What do you do when your own family, your parents, the people who should have your back tell you you're not real family, when they exclude you from a holiday, leave you stranded, and mock your independence, all while living off someone else's money? Well, I'm about to tell you exactly what happened when I stood up for myself and let my family's toxic behavior finally catch up to them. Spoiler alert, they never saw it coming. Hi, I'm Lisa, and this is the story of how my parents and sister tried to destroy my Christmas. They thought they could keep up their fake, lavish lifestyle by using my uncle's money, but what they didn't know was that my uncle wasn't about to let them get away with it. You're about to hear how I turned the tables, took control of my own holiday, and how my family's world came crashing down. Stick around, because this is one revenge story you won't want to miss. I never really understood how one person could be treated like royalty while the other was barely seen. But growing up, that was the reality for me. My name is Lisa, and I'm 34 years old. I live in Seattle now, working as a project manager at a tech company, making a comfortable $135,000 a year. I'm proud of what I've built for myself, but it didn't come easy. It wasn't handed to me on a silver platter, like it was for my sister Amanda. She's the golden child in our family, the one who gets everything. No questions asked, always has, always will. If you've ever dealt with someone who gets all the attention, all the praise, all the help, you know the frustration. I spent my entire childhood in her shadow, and my parents, Anne and Mike, couldn't have cared less. They never noticed me unless they had to. Amanda, though she was their masterpiece, she could do no wrong. She had the perfect blonde hair, the perfect smile, and the perfect life. Honestly, I think they believed the blonde thing made her extra special. They'd always say it, like it was a badge of honor. If she so much as sneezed, it was adorable. If I made a presentation at school, it barely registered. If she got an A, it was like she had just cured cancer. If I scraped by with a B+, it was somehow my fault for not being good enough. And don't get me started on how my parents would fawn over her. Her college tuition paid for, a brand new car handed to her, down payment for her first house covered. Meanwhile, I was juggling part-time jobs in college, scraping by with scholarships, and barely paying my rent each month. They never noticed the difference, though. As long as Amanda was happy, nothing else mattered. By the time I graduated, I had zero debt, but I was physically and emotionally drained. My sister had everything, and I was barely making it through. But here's the twist: Uncle Robert, my mom's brother, was the only person who saw me. Really saw me. He didn't look at me like I was the less shiny version of Amanda. He respected my grind. He recognized my independence. Uncle Robert was a self-made millionaire, a real estate mogul who built his empire from scratch. He never had kids of his own, so he'd always been generous with our family. But he wasn't the type to just throw money at people. He respected hard work, and that's something Amanda would never understand. For her, everything was about appearance. It was all about pretending. About Instagram photos of vacations funded by Robert, dinner dates that seemed to never end, but always at the expense of someone else's hard work. Meanwhile, I was over here working long hours, budgeting, and doing everything I could just to survive. But somehow, I was the one who got looked down on. I remember Uncle Robert once telling me, "Lisa, you're the only one in this family who knows what it means to stand on your own 2 feet." Those words meant more to me than I can even express. They were the only words of validation I'd heard in years, but of course, Amanda resented it. She resented that I had Uncle Robert's respect, even though she had all of the superficial things she thought made her life perfect. For me, life was real. It was about grinding, not about showing off. Amanda, on the other hand, thrived on being the center of attention, and my parents indulged it. They loved her for being their perfect little angel, and I was the one who didn't fit into their ideal family picture. The golden child could do no wrong. I was always left behind, always second best. The holidays were always a source of stress. I loved Christmas. Who doesn't love Christmas, right? But spending it with my family felt like a constant battle. And year after year, the battle was usually just me fighting for the smallest bit of recognition, while Amanda basked in the attention and adoration that came so easily to her. Then came the big tradition. Every year, Uncle Robert would treat the family to a luxury vacation. He had more money than he knew what to do with, and so he'd organize a trip to some far-flung, extravagant destination, usually around Christmas, It was his way of keeping the family connected, of getting us all together despite the miles that separated us. And for a while, it felt nice. That was until the year I realized just how far Amanda would go to exclude me from anything and everything. No matter how much I tried to make things work. That year, Uncle Robert picked Aspen. It was going to be a ski resort, a perfect place to escape the everyday chaos of life. It wasn't a trip I would normally choose, since I don't ski, but it wasn't about the activity for me, it was about being with family. I booked my flight, and despite a big work project deadline, I made sure I would be there. But this time, I didn't know what was coming. The trap set. The Aspen disaster. I arrived at the resort later than everyone else. I had worked late the night before to wrap up some loose ends at my job, and by the time I made it to Aspen, it was already late in the afternoon. The resort was absolutely gorgeous, with its snow-covered mountains, cozy cabins, and festive holiday decorations. It looked like something out of a Christmas movie. I was ready for a break, for some peace, some family bonding. But when I got to the front desk to check in, things took a strange turn. The clerk gave me a strange look. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't have a reservation under your name." At first, I thought maybe Amanda had forgotten to add me. Maybe it was just a mix-up. But when I saw her walk into the lobby, I realized I had made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. She looked at me with that fake, sweet smile of hers, the one she wore when she was about to make someone feel small. "Oh, Lisa," she said in the sweetest voice, as if I'd done something wrong. "Didn't I tell you I only booked rooms for the real family? Me, Brian, Noah, and of course, Mom and Dad." That was it, real family. It was like a slap across the face. Real family. She said it with a smug, condescending smile. It felt like a dagger to the heart. I glanced at my parents, hoping they'd step in, say something, but no. They just stood there, avoiding eye contact, pretending not to see what was happening. My heart sank. For years, I had been watching them enable Amanda's behavior, watching them treat her like she was more important than anyone else in the family, and here we were again. This time, it wasn't just a minor insult. This was a deliberate attempt to make me feel like I didn't belong. I stood there, speechless for a moment. I had no idea how to respond. This wasn't just a snub. It was something deeper, an intentional exclusion, a public humiliation that hit harder than I could have anticipated. Amanda just stood there, waiting for me to react, her smile never fading. "Well, I'm sure you can find somewhere else to stay. After all, you're so independent, right?" I felt my chest tighten, my face burning with embarrassment, but I wasn't going to let her see how much it hurt. Instead, I smiled through the pain and said, "All right, enjoy your holiday." Then I walked out. The air outside was crisp, biting. As I dragged my suitcase through the thick snow, every step I took felt heavier, not because of the weight of my luggage, but because of the emotional burden I was carrying. The injustice of it all hung around me like a storm cloud. How could my family treat me like this? How could my own sister, the one who'd been given everything on a silver platter, take such delight in excluding me? And where were my parents? How could they stand by and let her do this? I had always known that Amanda had a knack for making everything about her. But this was something else. This wasn't just exclusion. It was deliberate cruelty. And what hurt even more was that my parents, the ones who should have stepped in, didn't. They just stood there, pretending not to notice the obvious. They were complicit. And honestly, that was what hurt the most. I didn't want to let her win. I wasn't about to crawl back to Amanda and my parents, begging for a place to stay. No, that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to let this situation ruin my Christmas. As angry as I was, I refused to let Amanda's petty behavior ruin everything I had worked for. So, I did what any independent woman would do. I found an alternative. I pulled out my phone and searched for nearby hotels. It took only a few minutes before I found one that looked even better than the resort where my family was staying. The luxury hotel had an open suite, and it wasn't cheap. But I didn't care. At that moment, it wasn't about the money. It was about making a choice that I could feel proud of. A choice that would allow me to enjoy Christmas without the toxic weight of my family's expectations hanging over me. As I called for a taxi, I tried to shake off the overwhelming emotions swirling inside me. The cold wind cut through my jacket, but the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the emotional burn. As I stood there, suitcase in hand, I replayed the whole scene in my head. I couldn't believe that Amanda had the nerve to say real family like I wasn't even worth the effort, like I was some outsider. Real family. Those words echoed in my mind, stinging with each repetition. The taxi ride to the new hotel was short, but it gave me just enough time to breathe. The hotel was even more luxurious than I had imagined. The lobby had a sleek, modern design, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of the mountains. The heated pool was calling my name. As I entered my suite, I was blown away. The place was massive, with a fireplace that was already lit, a soaking tub that overlooked the snow-covered landscape, and a bed that looked too perfect to be real. It was the kind of suite you see in travel magazines, and now it was mine. I could have stayed there in complete silence, nursing my bruised ego and sulking, but I didn't. I made a decision right then and there. I wasn't going to let this be the Christmas where I let my family's toxicity define me. I wasn't going to waste my time being angry or upset. Instead, I was going to focus on what really mattered, creating my own joy. I picked up my phone again, and this time, I called Sarah, one of my best friends. Sarah was the kind of friend who always had your back, no matter what. She was the first person I'd call if I needed a laugh or to vent about something, and I knew she'd help me turn the situation around. "Hey, Sarah, how do you feel about spending Christmas in Aspen?" I said, trying to sound lighthearted, but there was no hiding the underlying frustration in my voice. There was a pause on the other end, and then she laughed. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "I've got this incredible suite, and I'm not spending Christmas alone. Come hang out with me." Without skipping a beat, Sarah replied, "I'm in. Let me grab Rachel, and we'll be there as soon as we can." The power of real friends. A couple of hours later, Sarah and Rachel showed up, and just like that, my mood started to shift. The weight on my shoulders lifted, and the bitterness that had been threatening to consume me melted away. We hugged, caught up, and immediately got to work transforming the suite into our personal Christmas retreat. We ordered room service burgers, fries, desserts, and then decided to take a dip in the hot tub. The hot tub was like something out of a dream. With the steam rising into the cold air and the mountains towering in the background, I finally felt like I was on vacation. For the first time all day, I could breathe without feeling like the world was collapsing in on me. It was peaceful, relaxing. As we soaked in the warmth, the conversation inevitably turned to what had happened earlier. Rachel couldn't believe it. "Wait," she actually said, "you're not real family?" she asked, incredulity in her voice. "Yep," I replied, my voice steady but still tinged with the hurt that I couldn't completely hide. She said it like it was nothing, like I was some outsider she could just throw away. And my parents, they didn't even do anything. They just stood there, looking ashamed but not enough to actually stand up for me. Sarah shook her head. "She's always been a piece of work, but this is a new low." She paused, then added, "Honestly, you're better off not spending Christmas with them." Rachel nodded in agreement. "Yeah, you're getting a real Christmas, with people who actually care about you. Amanda's just mad because she's not the center of attention anymore." It felt good to hear them say that. I had spent so many years in Amanda's shadow, doubting myself, questioning my worth because I wasn't the golden child. But in that moment, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not for how I looked or how much money I had, I realized something important: I was better off without them. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the hot tub. "You know, this might be the best Christmas I've ever had." Sarah and Rachel agreed, and for the rest of the evening, we threw ourselves into creating our own tradition. We danced around in our pajamas, ate way too much chocolate, and watched Christmas movies until we were laughing so hard our stomachs hurt. I didn't think about Amanda. I didn't think about my parents. All I could focus on was the joy I was creating with my friends, the real family I had chosen for myself. A small act of petty revenge. By the time we called it a night, I was feeling lighter. Yes, I had been hurt by my family's behavior, but I had also taken control of the situation in a way that made me feel powerful. As a final act of petty revenge, I posted a few Instagram stories. I wasn't trying to start a drama fest, but I wasn't going to let Amanda's exclusion define my holiday. So, I posted a video of us in the hot tub, the steam rising around us, and the mountains towering in the background. I also posted a picture of the room service spread. Nothing too crazy, just me, my friends, and a hell of a time. And of course, Amanda was the first one to view everything. The aftermath. Amanda's meltdown. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of texts from Amanda. She was furious. "I can't believe you treated me like that," she began, followed by a long string of texts blaming me for ruining everything, claiming I was being selfish, that I'd betrayed her. I didn't even bother responding. Instead, I showed Sarah and Rachel the texts, and they couldn't help but laugh. "She really thinks she's the victim here," Rachel said, scrolling through Amanda's desperate messages. "She's a piece of work." The text that followed was pure gold. "Noah's crying because you weren't there for Christmas. How could you do this to him?" The classic guilt trip, but this time, it didn't work. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, now she's playing the think of the children card. Pathetic. Sarah and Rachel were dying with laughter. "She's losing her mind. She can't handle that you're not playing her game anymore." As the day went on, the texts from Amanda kept coming. She tried every tactic in the book to make me feel guilty for not bowing to her demands. But this time, I wasn't having it. There was no more guilt, no more letting her manipulate me with her victim complex. I had finally realized that the only person I was responsible for was myself. Around midday, my phone buzzed again. It was from my mom. I could already feel my blood pressure rising as I saw her name on the screen. She'd never been one to call for a casual conversation, and I was pretty sure I knew exactly what this was about. "Lisa, you need to talk to Uncle Robert," she said, her tone full of desperation. "You know how important his support is for us. We can't be left out in the cold like this." I felt a twisted mix of anger and disbelief as I listened. Really? After all these years of enabling Amanda and letting her treat me like an outsider, now they wanted my help. My mother was asking me to fix everything because Uncle Robert had finally snapped and called them out on their behavior. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but firm, "I'm not fixing anything for you. I'm not going to get in the middle of this. You and Amanda caused this. You should be the ones to talk to him." She didn't like that. In fact, she didn't like it one bit. The phone call ended with her telling me how selfish I was being, how I was turning my back on my family. I didn't care. I wasn't going to be guilted into helping them this time. I hung up, turned my phone on silent, and went back to enjoying the holiday I had created for myself. The calm before the storm. Later that evening, I met with Uncle Robert. He had called and asked to meet for breakfast, and honestly, I was both relieved and nervous. While I knew he was angry about what had happened with Amanda and my parents, I wasn't sure what he was planning to do. Uncle Robert didn't act on impulse. When he made a decision, he followed through with precision. I found him sitting at a corner table in the hotel's restaurant, sipping coffee, looking calm and collected as always. He was the kind of man who didn't need to shout to command attention. His mere presence did that. "Lisa," he said as I sat down, his sharp eyes scanning my face, "what happened at the lodge?" And just like that, I told him everything, how Amanda had told me I wasn't real family, how my parents had just stood there, letting her get away with it. I laid it all out. No embellishments, no sugarcoating. As I spoke, I saw his expression change from one of thoughtfulness to disbelief. By the time I finished, he was shaking his head in disbelief. "I trusted Amanda to handle the booking for everyone," he said quietly, his voice low. "I can't believe she excluded you like that." His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. For the first time in ages, I felt heard. "And your parents?" he continued, his eyes hardening. "They just stood by and let it happen." I nodded, pretty much. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Then, without missing a beat, he looked up and said, "Don't worry, Lisa, I'll take care of this." I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but I knew from experience that when Uncle Robert said he would take care of something, it wasn't going to be a small fix. The aftermath. A family in crisis. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. That afternoon, I received a call from Uncle Robert. His voice was calm, but there was a definite edge to it now. "I've canceled everything," he said with a smirk I could hear through the phone. "I've canceled the reservations at the lodge, and I'm cutting them off completely. No more financial support. They need to learn some accountability." I was stunned. I had expected him to do something, sure, but I didn't think he'd go that far. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Amanda had been living a fake life for so long, using Uncle Robert's money to fund her delusions of grandeur, and now it was all coming crashing down. I didn't waste any time. I could already guess what would happen next, but I had no intention of getting involved. I wasn't about to be the mediator between them and Uncle Robert. This was their mess, and they needed to clean it up themselves. It wasn't long before my phone started blowing up. The first call was from Amanda. Her voice was high-pitched with panic. "Lisa, are you serious?" she yelled the moment I picked up. "Uncle Robert canceled everything. Noah is crying, and we don't know where to go." I let out a slow, deliberate breath. "Try being independent for once," I said calmly before hanging up. She called back immediately, but I didn't answer. I was done. Next came the barrage of texts from my parents. My mom sent me a message dripping with guilt, accusing me of betraying them, of turning my back on family. My dad was a bit more direct, asking me to intervene and talk some sense into Uncle Robert. I was done. Though this wasn't my battle anymore. My parents had chosen to side with Amanda for years, and now they were facing the consequences. I wasn't going to save them. Uncle Robert's wrath. Later that day, Uncle Robert came by my suite to check in. He was calm, almost amused by the whole situation. He'd never seen my family face real consequences before, and for him, this was a bit of a revelation. "I'm enjoying this," he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "They've never faced real consequences before. This will do them some good." I couldn't help but laugh. For once, I didn't feel like the odd one out. For once, I had someone in my corner. Someone who wasn't going to let Amanda or my parents get away with their entitled behavior. I felt lighter after our conversation. The weight I had carried for so many years, the weight of trying to prove I was enough, had been lifted. For the first time, I could see that standing up for myself wasn't just about gaining respect. It was about reclaiming my dignity. Amanda's last-ditch effort. That night, as I sat in my suite with Sarah and Rachel, watching Christmas movies and laughing, I was finally at peace. I didn't care that Amanda was throwing a tantrum. I didn't care that my family was in crisis. I was with the people who mattered, the people who loved me unconditionally. But then came the knock at the door. At first, we thought it was room service or maybe a delivery. But when Sarah opened the door, there stood Amanda. She waltzed in like she owned the place, her perfect blonde hair shining in the light, her designer outfit as polished as ever. The audacity. "Hey girls," she said as if nothing had happened. "Mind if I join? This suite is amazing." I stared at her, incredulous. After everything she had done, everything she had said to me, now she thought she could just waltz in like nothing had happened. "No," I said, standing up and crossing my arms, my voice calm but firm. "You weren't invited. Leave." For a moment, she seemed shocked, her smile faltering, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, come on, Lisa. Don't be so uptight. It's Christmas." I didn't waver. "It is Christmas," I said, my voice unwavering. "And you tried to ruin mine. Get out." The moment Amanda's face turned bright red, I knew she wasn't going to push back anymore. For once, she realized she wasn't in control of the situation. She stood up from her chair, flustered, throwing her purse over her shoulder, and without saying another word, stormed out of the suite, slamming the door behind her. The echo of it lingered in the air, but the only sound that followed was the three of us bursting into laughter. "Did that seriously just happen?" Rachel asked, her voice high-pitched with disbelief. We all laughed even harder. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all was just too much. For all the drama, the tension, and the years of feeling like the odd one out, Amanda's behavior was like watching a spoiled child throw a tantrum after not getting their way. "She's delusional," Sarah said between laughs. "She thinks the world revolves around her. And now that it doesn't, she doesn't know what to do." I couldn't agree more. For so long, I'd let her manipulate me, let her make me feel less than. I had been the one left out, the one excluded, the one ignored. But this time, I wasn't going to let her win. For once, I was in control, and it felt incredible. The laughter eventually faded, and we went back to watching Christmas movies, snacking on ridiculous amounts of chocolate, and just enjoying each other's company. I wasn't just having fun. I was healing. Every moment I spent away from my family, away from the chaos that always seemed to follow Amanda, was a small victory. But of course, Amanda couldn't leave well enough alone. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a series of incoming texts from her. The first one was a classic victimhood at its finest. "I can't believe how you treated me after everything I've done for you. This is how you repay me." I almost laughed out loud. Everything she's done for me, What had she done? Her entire existence seemed to revolve around using people for what she could get, acting like everyone owed her something just because she was Amanda, the golden child. I wasn't going to let her play the victim anymore. Next came the guilt trip. Noah was so excited to see you this Christmas. He's been asking about you all day and now he's crying because you didn't spend time with him. How could you do this to him? I could almost picture her sitting in her car, sending text after text, hoping to get a rise out of me, but it didn't work anymore. Noah Amanda had used him as a tool for years. She dragged him into her drama when it suited her. And now, suddenly, he was her emotional shield. Please, I showed the texts to Rachel and Sarah, and they were just as outraged as I was. She's pulling the think of the children card now, Rachel asked, shaking her head. She's ridiculous, Sarah added. She's trying to make you the villain here, but you're not playing into her game anymore. And that's when it hit me. For years, I had let Amanda manipulate me into thinking I wasn't enough. I had let her use guilt, exclusion, and her family's favoritism to control me. But now, for the first time, I could see the truth. Amanda wasn't in control of my life anymore. The aftermath. The collapse of a fake life. The next few days felt like a strange form of closure. While I was basking in my victory, Amanda and my parents were starting to crumble. It was a slow process at first, but the cracks in their perfect little world were starting to show. Uncle Robert had made sure of that. Amanda's fake lifestyle was beginning to unravel. She had always portrayed herself as the woman who had everything: designer bags, luxury vacations, the perfect family, but none of it had ever been hers. It was all funded by Uncle Robert. Without his support, she and Brian couldn't afford their expensive home anymore. They had to sell it and downgrade to a tiny rental house on the outskirts of their town. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amanda, who had always made a big deal about her perfect life, was now trying to spin this as a temporary move, pretending like it was some noble sacrifice. But we all knew the truth. She was drowning. The credit cards were maxed out. Noah had to be pulled from his private school, the one Amanda loved to brag about on social media. And the real kicker, Amanda's Instagram went silent. For months, she had posted daily updates about her blessed life, complete with perfect vacations and fancy dinners. Now nothing. The last post she shared was before Christmas, and even that one was a generic caption about being grateful for family. I couldn't help but feel a little vindicated. But it wasn't just Amanda. My parents, too, were feeling the weight of Uncle Robert's decision. Without his financial help, they couldn't stay in their upscale retirement community in Arizona anymore. They had to move into a much smaller condo. My mom was absolutely furious about it. She sent me an email, one of those long, dramatic ones full of guilt and self-pity. We sacrificed so much for you and Amanda. It began. We never expected to end up in this position at our age. It's not fair that we have to start over. It took everything in me not to respond with something sarcastic or angry, but I knew better. I wasn't going to engage in their drama anymore. I had spent too long playing their game, letting them control the narrative. This was my life now, and I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their toxic mess. The sweet liberation. A week after Christmas, things had officially shifted. Amanda and my parents were in full crisis mode, scrambling to keep up appearances, to salvage what little was left of their so-called perfect lives. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I had been promoted at work to senior project manager, and the pay bump came at just the right time. All those hours of hard work, the sacrifices I had made, were finally paying off. I was finally secure in myself, financially and emotionally. Uncle Robert's move to cut them off hadn't just freed me from their drama, it had freed them from their delusions of grandeur. They were forced to face the consequences of their actions, and I couldn't help but think that, in the end, it was exactly what they needed. I knew I was no longer the person I had been just a few months ago. I was stronger, more independent, and completely free from the weight of my family's dysfunction. Uncle Robert's validation. A few weeks later, I received a handwritten note from Uncle Robert for my birthday. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a simple card with a message that meant more to me than I can explain. Proud of you for standing tall. Independence is the best gift you've given yourself. I teared up when I read it. Uncle Robert had always been my biggest supporter, but seeing those words on paper, written by his hand, was validation for everything I had worked so hard for. As for Amanda and my parents, they kept sending their guilt-ridden texts, trying to make me feel bad for not coming to their rescue. My mom, as usual, tried to manipulate me into fixing things with Uncle Robert. Amanda continued to play the victim, asking me to talk to him on her behalf. I didn't respond to any of it. The truth was, I had learned a powerful lesson. Sometimes, walking away from people who don't treat you right is the best thing you can do, not just for you, but for them as well. It forces them to face the reality of their actions. And for once, I wasn't going to be the one to fix it. Explosive hook, 08 seconds. You won't believe what happened when my family kicked me out of a luxury vacation and said I wasn't real family until my uncle exposed everything. Rapid story tease, 8 to 45 seconds. My name's Lisa, and growing up, my sister Amanda was the golden child everything handed to her, while I worked my ass off to make my own way. But it wasn't until Christmas that things really blew up. My uncle, Robert, had been funding my entire family's lifestyle. But this time, he trusted Amanda to book the family trip. And she deliberately left me out. She told me I wasn't part of the real family. I was humiliated, but I didn't back down. Instead, I booked my own luxury hotel room, and that's when I made the decision this was the last straw. But you won't believe what happened next. Strong CTA bridge to long form 45-60 seconds. That's just the beginning. What I did in response to my family's betrayal was genius. The full revenge was so perfect. I had to make a complete breakdown of how it all played out. Trust me, you won't want to miss the way my uncle flipped everything on them. Full story in my latest video, link in bio. But here's the question. How did my uncle's intervention completely change their lives? Story 2. I always knew my mom and sister had money problems. It was an unspoken thing, like a shadow that hovered over every visit I made to their house. I didn't live there anymore, hadn't for years, but whenever I stopped by, there was always something wrong. An overdue bill, a broken appliance, an emergency that seemed to crop up every few months. At first, it never seemed like much. It was always little things. Can you send me $50? I'm running low on groceries this week. Hey, can you help me pay the internet bill? It's only $100. I'll pay you back. Sorry to ask, but I need $200 for a car repair. I'll get it back to you as soon as I can. I didn't mind at first. Family, right? You help each other out when things get tough. I'd send the money without hesitation because I believed that was what families did for each other. But over time, the requests grew. They got bigger. The emergencies became more urgent and the excuses more convincing. It started with my mom. A simple call one afternoon, her voice was shaky, panic laced with desperation. Bill, we're behind on the rent. I don't know what to do. I wasn't rolling in money myself, but she sounded scared. So I did what I'd always done. I sent $500. A month later, Jessica, my sister, called me crying. I screwed up. She said, her voice cracking, I missed my car payment. They're threatening to repossess it. I just need $400, please. I sent that too. A few weeks passed, and then it was $300 for an overdue credit card bill, then $200 for utilities, then $500 again for rent. Each time, the story was the same. This was the last time. They swore they would get back on their feet, but nothing ever changed. They were always in a mess, and I was always the one cleaning it up. I should have seen the pattern. I should have realized that none of this was about emergencies. They weren't fixing anything, they were just leaning on me. Every single time, I gave in. And then came the big one, the moment that would make me see everything clearly. One night, I got a call from both of them. My mom's voice trembled. Her words clipped, almost frantic. Bill, this is really bad. We're in trouble. We don't know who else to turn to. I asked what had happened, but they wouldn't tell me over the phone. They kept saying it was an emergency, that it was too big to explain. How much do you need? I asked, already knowing what was coming. There was a long pause before Jessica whispered, $5,000. I almost laughed. $5,000. That was no longer an emergency. That was a disaster. But they begged, promised that this would be the last time, that everything would be okay after this. And like a damn fool, I believed them. So I sent it. But before I did, I made one thing crystal clear. This is the last time, they promised, and of course, they lied. It wasn't even a week later that I decided to drop by their house, just to check in. I wasn't planning on staying long. I was curious to see how they were doing, if they were finally getting things together, but when I arrived, The front door was ajar. I didn't think much of it. Maybe they had forgotten to lock up, but as I walked closer, I heard voices. I paused, confused at first, and then I froze. Laughter. Full-on laughter. It was Jessica's laugh first, cutting through the air. "If he really is such a loser, this is just the beginning," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. My stomach tightened. That wasn't casual laughter. That wasn't the "I'm just kidding" kind of joke. This was something else. I heard my mom's voice then. She laughed too, a soft chuckle, like they were in on some joke together. "Can you believe he actually sent the money?" I stayed completely still. My chest tightened, my hands clenched into fists. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I peeked around the corner of the house and saw them sitting on the couch, their attention focused on something. Jessica was holding her phone up, scrolling through hotel websites. My mom was pointing at the screen, like they were planning their next vacation. "Look at this one," my mom said, a smile on her face as she stared at the phone. "Beachfront, 5 stars. Jessica. This is perfect." Jessica's grin was wide, almost too wide. "Hawaii, here we come." I felt like I had been sucker punched. $5,000, all that money I gave them, gone, and they were planning a vacation. Not to pay bills, not to fix their problems. No, they were planning a trip to Hawaii. I walked in without knocking. The second I did, both of them froze. My mom's face went pale. Jessica's phone froze mid-scroll, her finger still hovering over the screen. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. "Bill," Jessica finally said, forcing a laugh, "when did you get here?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I looked at the phone in her hand. On the screen was the picture of a luxury resort. Oceanfront, 5 stars. The total price, $4 to $800. My mom quickly shoved her phone between the cushions like that would erase the evidence. "Honey, we were just kidding," she said, her voice high and nervous. "You know how we are." I tilted my head, not breaking my gaze, joking. Jessica nodded too quickly. "Yeah, come on. You really think we'd do that to you?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the screen. The recording app was open. A timer read 7:42. "What's that?" my mom stammered. I tapped the screen, recording saved. Jessica's face drained of color. My mom's expression twisted in panic. "Bill, delete that now," Jessica shouted. I stepped back, my grip tightening on my phone. "If you try that again, I swear to God, Jess." Mom threw her hands up. "Honey, please listen. We didn't mean it. We were just venting." "Just venting?" "Venting," I repeated, my voice cold. "You call screwing me out of $5,000 venting?" Jessica groaned, rolling her eyes. "Oh my God. Bill, we didn't scam you. You gave us the money." I smirked, tapping my phone's screen. "And you lied about why you needed it. That's called cheating." Jessica rolled her eyes again. "Oh, please. Like you'd go to the cops and tell them your own family tricked you." I grinned. "Maybe not, but I bet Aunt Linda would love to hear about it. Or how about your boss? I'm sure she'd be interested." Jessica's eyes flashed with panic. She opened her mouth to speak, but I was already scrolling through her boss's LinkedIn profile. What are you doing?" she stammered, her face pale. "I'm just making sure your boss knows how you treat people." Jessica's expression hardened. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I would," I said, the smile never leaving my face. "Want me to send the link to her?" Her jaw clenched, and her hand shot out to grab my phone, but I stepped back, keeping it just out of reach. "Don't even think about it." My mom, seeing the tide turning, quickly intervened. Okay, we'll fix this. Bill, just give us time, please." I folded my arms, the coldness in my voice now unmistakable. "You have 7 days." Jessica scoffed, throwing her hands up. "And what if we can't get it?" I shrugged. "Then I'll get creative." Mom grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Bill, please, we just need more time." I yanked my arm away. 7 days, no more." I turned and walked out without another word. For the next 3 days, there was nothing. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I figured they were scrambling, trying to come up with the money, but I didn't care. I'd already made my point. Then, on the 4th day, I woke up to a fraud alert from my bank. "An attempt to withdraw $5,000 from your account has been blocked." My stomach dropped. I logged into my account and saw the details. Someone had tried to access my savings. The account number matched mine. I didn't need to think twice. I knew exactly who it was. Jessica. She must have gotten my banking info somehow, maybe an old statement lying around. Maybe she'd seen me enter my PIN before. I didn't know, but I knew it was her. I called her immediately. "What nice try," I said, my voice low. She picked up on the third ring, sounding groggy. "What are you talking about?" I laughed. "Did you really?" I let the silence hang between us for a few seconds, the tension thick in the air. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't about to give Jessica the satisfaction of hearing my nerves. She had messed with the wrong person, and I was done being the family ATM? "What nice try," I repeated, my voice calm, almost mocking. She hesitated, and I could hear her breathing change. She clearly hadn't expected me to catch on so fast. "What are you talking about?" she asked, sounding groggy, like she had just rolled out of bed. I couldn't help but laugh again. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't see the attempt to steal $5,000 from my account?" There was a pause. Jessica's voice was defensive, but it wavered slightly. "Jesus, Bill, you're paranoid." I grinned, letting the satisfaction of catching her play out. "Oh, I'm being paranoid. Then you won't mind if I report this to the cops, right?" The moment I said that, I knew I had her. Her breath caught in her throat. No, come on, don't do that," she stammered. Her voice panicked now. "Oh, I'll think about it," I said, leaning back in my chair, watching the little bubble of control slip away from her. "Maybe you should have thought about the consequences before trying to dip into my savings." She sighed heavily. Okay, I'll fix it. Just give me some more time. Bill, please." I didn't respond right away. I just let her stew in it, her desperation seeping through the phone. She knew she was cornered, and she was hoping I'd give in. I wasn't about to. I hung up the phone without saying another word. An hour later, I got a text from Jessica. "Please don't tell Mom." I smiled at the text, amusement bubbling up inside me. It was the first time I had ever seen Jessica act like this, nervous, scared, and begging. It was strange to see the person who had once treated me like an endless source of cash finally realizing that the game was up. I let her sweat it out for a while before I replied. A week becomes 3 days. Nothing, not a word. By then, I knew they weren't planning to pay me back. They were stalling, hoping I'd let it go, but they had no idea what was coming next. They thought they could play me. They thought they could keep taking, keep lying, and I would always be there to clean up their mess. Well, I was done. That night, around 10:30 p.m., I drove over to their place. I didn't knock. I still had a key from when I used to help out, and funny enough, they never took it back. I let myself in quietly, trying to make sure they didn't hear me. The lights in the living room were on, and I could hear voices. They were talking, no, they were planning something. I don't know what to do. "Mom," I heard Jessica's voice, low but strained. "He's serious this time." My ears perked up and I leaned against the doorframe, my hands still in my pockets. Mom's voice was calm, but there was a hint of nervousness in it. "He's bluffing. Jessica, he'll get over it." "No, Mom, he's not." I tried to take the money out of his account, and he caught me. My stomach sank. They had actually gone that far. They had tried to steal from me directly. There was a long pause. Then Mom sighed. "Damn it, Jessica." I couldn't help but smile to myself. This was just too perfect. They were already talking about how they could spin this to make me the bad guy, but they didn't know I had already turned the tables on them. "I'll handle it," Mom said, her voice cold. "If he wants to play hardball, fine. We'll just make him the bad guy. We'll tell people he's the one bullying us, that he has anger issues." My blood ran cold. Jessica's voice was quieter this time. "That's kind of messed up, don't you think?" Mom didn't hesitate. "No, it's not. He's a man. We're 2 women. If we start telling people that he's threatened us, that he's unstable, who's going to believe him over us?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were plotting to ruin me, to make me out to be the villain because they couldn't get their way. I stepped forward, and they both froze. I pushed the door open slightly, enough for them to see me standing there. My arms were crossed, my stance calm but firm. "Wow, that's impressive," I said flatly. Mom gasped, her face draining of color. "Bill, what are you doing here?" I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was a smile that carried a cold, hard edge. "Oh, just listening to my family plan to ruin my life." Jessica's eyes widened. "It's not like that." "Oh, no, it's exactly like that." I interrupted, my voice sharp now. I pulled out my phone, the recording's still running, and now I have proof. Jessica's face went pale. She shot up from the couch, but I stepped back, holding the phone out of her reach. "Delete that now," she shouted, her voice frantic. I grinned, keeping my voice steady. "If you try that again, I swear to God." Mom threw her hands up like she was trying to calm a wild animal. "Bill, honey, listen, we didn't mean it. It was just venting. That's all." "Venting," I repeated, my eyes narrowing. "You call scamming me out of $5,000 venting?" Jessica groaned, rolling her eyes. "Oh my God, we didn't scam you. You gave us the money willingly." I laughed. "Yeah, and you lied about why you needed it. That's called cheating." Jessica rolled her eyes again. "Oh, please. Like you'd really go to the cops and tell them your own family tricked you." I tapped my phone screen and smirked. "Maybe not. But Aunt Linda, your boss may be a lawyer. I'm sure they'd love to hear about it." Jessica's eyes flicked between me and the phone, and I could see the panic in her face. She opened her mouth to protest, but I was already scrolling through her boss's LinkedIn profile. "You wouldn't," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Oh, I would," I said calmly. "Want me to send the link to her?" Her jaw clenched. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I am." I took a deep breath. "And you've got two choices. 1, you pay me back every last cent. 2, I send this recording to everyone, your family, your neighbors, your boss, maybe even a lawyer." Jessica paled. "Jesus, Bill, are you serious?" I smirked. "I'm very serious. You have 24 hours. I want my money back or this gets worse for you. Much worse." Mom clenched her fists, her face a mixture of anger and fear. She took a step toward me, but I held my ground. "Bill, please, just give us more time. We'll figure it out." "No," I said, voice cold. "Tomorrow, you have 1 day." With that, I turned and walked out, but before I left, I added one last thing. "Oh, and Jessica, you should have never messed with me." The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of texts and missed calls. Most of them were from Jessica, trying to apologize and beg for more time, but I wasn't interested in her excuses, not anymore. Then came the unexpected part, an email from my bank. "Fraud alert. An attempt to withdraw $5,000 from your account has been blocked." I felt my stomach drop as I read the message. I was already well aware of who had tried to steal from me. Jessica hadn't even bothered to be subtle. She was trying to dip into my savings and thought I wouldn't notice. But now, I had the evidence. I called her immediately. "Nice try," I said, my voice calm but firm. She picked up on the third ring, sounding groggy. "What are you talking about?" I couldn't help myself. "Did you really think I wouldn't catch that $5,000 withdrawal attempt? You're not as clever as you think." There was a long silence before she muttered, "Jesus, Bill, you're paranoid." I laughed. "Oh, I'm paranoid. You won't mind if I report you to the police then, will you?" She was silent for a moment before panicking. No, come on, don't do that." "Oh, I'll think about it," I said, enjoying every second of it, "but you'd better come up with that money." Jessica. Story 3. It was supposed to be a simple business trip. Just a few days out of town to take care of some work I'd been putting off. I left my 6-year-old son, Max, in the care of my parents, people who had always been a bit self-centered, to put it mildly. But I figured, hey, they were family, and this would be good for them. A chance to bond with their grandson. Maybe even do some of the things grandparents are supposed to do. Bake cookies, play in the park, have some fun. I should have known better. I should have seen the signs. But I was desperate. My ex-wife, who had moved to Europe with her new husband, hadn't even asked where Max would stay while I was gone. She just shrugged and said, "You'll figure it out." So, I asked my parents. At first, they seemed thrilled, overly enthusiastic even. "Of course, Max can stay with us. We'll have a blast, won't we, Max?" My mother practically gushed on the phone, and I fell for it because, well, they're family, right? You trust your family, but something was off. My mom hesitated just a little too long before agreeing, and my dad mumbled something about already having plans for the month, but then quickly changed the subject. Still, I convinced myself that everything would be fine. They were grandparents. How hard could it be? I even took the time to spell out the basics for them. "He's 6, I said. "He needs structure, no staying up late, no junk food, and for God's sake, no leaving him alone." "Oh, we know," my mom said with a laugh. "We raised you, didn't we?" That should have been my first red flag, but I ignored it. Everything seemed fine for the first few days. They picked up the phone when I called, cheerful and seemingly engaged. "He's such a good boy," my mom would say. "We took him to the park today. He had a blast." Every night, when I checked in, they would say the same thing. "Oh, he's already asleep. Big day for him." They even sent me videos Max playing in the backyard, laughing, having fun. Everything looked normal, but I should have known. I should have paid closer attention. My parents weren't the type to just parent. They never really had been. Their world revolved around their needs, their wants, their vacations. They were the kind of people who saw a grandchild as a side project, not a priority. Still, I didn't think they'd actually mess up. Then came the morning of the 8th day. That's when I got the phone call. It was Bill, my parents' neighbor. He was in his 70s, a retired mechanic who paid attention to everything. He never called me unless it was important, so when I saw his name on my phone, I knew something was wrong. "Lucas," he said, his voice uneasy. "I don't want to alarm you, but something's not right." I immediately felt my heart drop. "What do you mean, Bill?" "I've been hearing crying coming from your parents' house." He continued, "It started last night, then stopped for a while, but it started again this morning." I knocked a few times, but no one answered. "Their car's in the driveway, but they're not home. I don't know what to make of it." I felt my body go cold. "They're home," I said, already dialing their number. "They have to be," but they didn't answer. I tried again, voicemail. I texted my mom, then called again, nothing. "Bill, get inside. I don't care how. Just get in there," I said, my voice tight with panic. There was a long pause. I could tell Bill was thinking about how to approach this. Then, finally, he spoke again, his voice tight with anger. "I broke a window. Lucas, I'm inside. They're gone. Lucas, but your son is in there. He's in his room, shaking. Looks like he's been alone for a while." I almost dropped the phone. I had to force myself to breathe. "Put him on the phone," I demanded. There was a rustling sound. Then Max's small, broken voice came through the line. "Daddy," he whispered. My heart shattered. "Hey, buddy," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'm coming." "Okay, you're safe. Bill is with you. You're going to be okay." Max sniffled. I was scared. The thunder was really loud. I clenched my fists, trying to keep the tears back. He was scared, and I wasn't there. My parents weren't there. Bill's voice came back on the line. "They left 3 days ago. Lucas." They packed their bags, told him they'd be back real soon, and left him with some snacks on the counter, locked the door behind them. 3 days. 3. I was already grabbing my keys, my mind spinning. "How's he doing, Bill?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "He's barely eaten. Kept saying they'd be back soon. He doesn't really understand what's happening." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, my stomach turning with disgust. This was a betrayal, the kind that cuts deep, the kind you don't forget. "I'm on my way," I said. "Stay with him." It was a 9-hour drive to my parents' place. I didn't care about the speed limits. I got pulled over 3 times, but I explained the situation, and 2 out of 3 officers let me off with a warning. The third one told me to drive safe, but he was visibly horrified and urged me to hurry. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, it was almost midnight. Bill was waiting outside, and Max was curled up on a blanket on his porch swing, half asleep. As soon as I got out of the car, my son ran toward me, threw himself into my legs, and held on like he thought I might vanish if he let go. I knelt down, scooping him into my arms. "I'm here, buddy," I whispered. "I'm here." Bill stood nearby with his arms crossed, looking every bit as angry as I felt. "He barely ate anything, Lucas," Bill said quietly. "I gave him what I had, but he wouldn't touch it. Just kept saying, 'They'll be back soon.'" I swallowed the anger threatening to choke me. I looked down at Max, still clinging to me like his life depended on it. "Did they call text?" Bill shook his head. "Nothing." I pulled out my phone and dialed my mom's number. This time, she picked up. "Lucas, honey," she said, sounding almost cheerful. What a surprise. I couldn't keep the rage out of my voice. "Where the hell are you?" There was a pause, and I could hear her trying to come up with an excuse. "Oh, we're at home, of course," she said, her voice strained. "Just out for a little while." Little while. For 3 days I almost shouted, "Mom, I'm at your house right now, and you're not here. Silence. Then, she said it. "Oh, well, we went on a little last-minute trip. Your dad and I found a great deal on a cruise." She sounded completely unfazed. "You left a 6-year-old alone for 3 days?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. "Oh, come on, Lucas," she said dismissively. "We left him food, he wasn't stranded, he's fine." My stomach twisted. I glanced over at Max, curled up in my arms, finally starting to drift back to sleep. He was fine. "He's 6, I said through gritted teeth. "He's not fine." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "If you're not here by morning, I'm calling the police." The line went dead. She hung up on me. I stared at my phone, stunned. Then I did the only thing I knew how to do. I sent her a message. "If you're not here by morning, I'm calling the police." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could think about was the fact that my parents had left my son, their grandson, alone for 3 days, left him scared and confused, thinking they were coming back, all while they were out on a cruise. When I finally woke up, I knew exactly what I had to do. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind would race back to the image of Max curled up in Bill's arms, shaking with fear. He was just a little kid, and my parents had left him alone for days, completely unbothered, while they went on some vacation. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could they? They knew how much I depended on them, and yet they'd left Max like he was some inconvenience. The house was quiet when I woke up at 7:00 a.m. Max was still asleep on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket. Bill was gone, but he'd left a note saying he'd check in later. I knew I couldn't wait around for my parents to show up. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I sat on the couch, my hands trembling as I stared at my phone. I kept checking for messages, hoping for an apology or at least some kind of explanation from my mother, but there was nothing. I dialed her number again. It went straight to voicemail. I stared at the phone, my patience wearing thin. My mom had always been the queen of avoidance, but this was a whole new level. She wasn't answering. She wasn't even acknowledging what she had done. I made a decision. I wasn't waiting for her to show up on her own terms. If they weren't going to come to me with an apology or some kind of remorse, I was going to go to them. I grabbed Max's backpack, filled it with his things, and we left. It wasn't like I had to rush, but every second I spent sitting in that house felt like it was eating me alive. I needed to confront them. I needed them to see how badly they'd messed up. The drive to my parents' house felt like it took hours, even though it was only 30 minutes away. The whole time, Max sat in the back, quietly staring out the window. I could tell he was trying to make sense of everything, trying to piece together what had happened. "Dad," he finally asked, "are they going to be mad at me?" I clenched the steering wheel, my jaw tight. "Nobody. They're going to be mad at me, not you." He stayed silent after that, and I could hear the quiet thumping of his sneakers against the back seat as I drove. He was worried. He didn't even understand the full scope of it, but I could see the way his little shoulders were hunched in, the way his eyes never quite looked at me directly. He was scared, and the fact that it was my own parents who had caused that fear made me sick. By the time I pulled up in front of my parents' house, I was boiling with rage. I didn't even care that it was still early. I didn't care about anything except the fact that they had left my son, my child, alone in that house. The anger inside me felt like it was going to explode. Max's hand was on the door handle before I even had the chance to get out. He looked up at me with wide eyes. "Can we go home now, Daddy?" I took a deep breath and forced a smile. Even though the rage was burning through me like wildfire. "We will, buddy. But we need to talk to them first." Max's eyes flicked toward the house, and I could see the unease in his face. "Are they going to yell?" I nodded. "Yeah, they are, but they deserve it." The door was unlocked. I should have expected that. They never locked the door when I visited. I stepped inside with Max trailing behind me. The house smelled of coffee and stale air, like they'd just woken up. I could hear my mom in the kitchen, clinking around like nothing was wrong. I walked into the kitchen without saying anything, but the second my mother saw me, her face froze. My dad, who was sitting at the table drinking his coffee, looked up, his expression blank but tired. "Lucas," my mother said, her voice airy and unbothered. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I echoed, my voice rising without meaning to. "You left a 6-year-old alone in your house for 3 days. You went on vacation and didn't even tell me." Her face went pale, but she didn't flinch. "It was just a little trip. Lucas, we needed a break." Your father and I haven't had time for ourselves in years. You know how it is. We deserve a little vacation. I blinked, dumbfounded. A vacation, I repeated, disbelief settling in my voice. You left Max alone, in the dark, with nothing but snacks. And you call it a vacation? My dad pushed his chair back. Standing slowly, he stretched, clearly trying to shake off the tension in the room. Oh, stop it, Lucas, he said with a casual shrug. We left him food, didn't we? The kid's not a baby. He's fine. He needs to learn to be independent. I felt my blood boil. My voice came out in a low, dangerous growl. You think a 6-year-old can just take care of himself? Are you serious? He's 6. Lucas, my mother said, sounding tired. He's not a baby. Kids have to learn to be independent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you kidding me? He can't even reach the top shelf in the kitchen, I shouted. He was crying in the dark, alone, during a thunderstorm. He thought you were coming back any minute, and you— I said we left him food, my mom interrupted, exasperated. It's not like we left him stranded somewhere. We left him snacks. Snacks, I shot back, incredulous. Granola bars. Crackers. You think that's enough for a kid who's scared out of his mind because you're not coming back? My dad was standing by the counter now, his arms crossed. Lucas, stop being so dramatic. You're overreacting. He had food. He was fine. He was alone for 3 days, I said, practically shaking with anger. You think this is about food? He thought you left him forever. My mom rolled her eyes, exasperated. Oh, for God's sake, Lucas, it was just a little trip. It's not the end of the world. Yeah, I snapped. It's not the end of the world. It's just the end of our relationship. Max had quietly sat down on the couch while all this was happening, his little feet swinging as he stared at the floor. His tiny fingers were wrapped around the edge of the cushion, and I could tell he was listening, absorbing every word. I looked at him, and a cold, hard resolve set in. I wasn't going to let them do this to him. Not anymore. You're never seeing him again, I said flatly. My mother's face twisted with offense. You can't be serious, she snapped. You can't just cut us out of his life. I stepped forward and grabbed the keys off the counter, the keys to the car I had bought them as a gift. Actually, I can, I said, my voice steady. I'm taking the car. I'm taking the keys, and you're not getting it back. My dad's face twisted with outrage. What the hell are you doing? He demanded. That's our car. Not anymore, I said, turning to walk out, but my mother followed me to the door, still shouting. Lucas, give me the keys right now. You're being completely unfair. I stepped out into the driveway, Max still holding on to my jacket like his life depended on it. He was looking up at me, his eyes wide and filled with confusion. I could feel his tiny fingers gripping tighter with every word my mother yelled behind us. As I opened the car door, my mom stormed out barefoot, her face contorted with fury. She wasn't worried about the fact that she'd just abandoned her grandson. She was angry because I dared take away their vacation car. Give me the keys, she yelled, her voice shrill. I looked at her, my voice as calm as I could manage. You left your grandson in that house for 3 days while you went on a cruise. You think I'm unreasonable? That's what's unfair. My dad, now following her outside, added, He's 6. Lucas, he'll be fine. Kids need independence. I almost couldn't believe my ears. This was my father, the man who had always preached about responsibility, now making excuses for neglect. I stared at him for a moment, then I said, If you think that's okay, then you've got bigger problems than I thought. I walked to the car, but before I closed the door, I turned back. Oh, and by the way, I started, a wicked grin spreading across my face. I canceled your credit card. Their faces went pale. You what? My mom screamed, her hands trembling. I didn't wait. I slid into the car with Max, and as I turned the ignition, I looked up just in time to see my mother's face twist into a mask of fury and disbelief. She was standing on the porch, barefoot, still in the vacation clothes she'd probably bought with the emergency credit card I'd just canceled. My dad was behind her, rubbing his forehead like he'd just woken from a long, peaceful nap. Completely oblivious to the chaos he had caused. You're going to regret this, my mom shouted after me. I didn't answer. Instead, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Max's small face staring up at me with those innocent, wide eyes. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could sense the shift in the air. I wasn't going to let them hurt him anymore. I wasn't going to let them convince me that this was just a minor mishap, something that could be swept under the rug. What they had done wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. I drove off, and my parents didn't chase me. They stood there in the driveway, stunned, helpless. I could see my mom's arms waving around, probably still yelling something, but I didn't care. The first week after I cut them off was unnervingly quiet. No calls, no texts, no messages. For the first time in a long time, my phone didn't ring with desperate requests for money or excuses about why they couldn't manage their finances. I figured they were either too embarrassed to contact me or still too self-absorbed to realize the full weight of what they had done. But honestly, I wasn't about to wait around for an apology that was never going to come. Max was happy at home, finally sleeping soundly in his own bed, eating regular meals, and not waking up in the middle of the night, scared and confused. He didn't ask about his grandparents, not right away, but every now and then. I'd catch him staring out the window, his eyes lost in thought. I knew he missed them, he was a kid. After all, but what he didn't know yet was that his safety mattered more to me than any of their empty promises. And then, a week later, I got a knock at the door. I didn't need to open it. I already knew who it was. The angry knock, the way it rattled the door frame, could only belong to one person, my mother. I opened it, and there they were, standing on my porch, my parents, both looking like they had just walked out of some drama-filled soap opera. My dad was already sweating in the midday heat, wearing a wrinkled Hawaiian shirt, his posture defensive. My mother was barefoot, her hands on her hips, staring me down like I was the one who had wronged her. Behind them, standing like a bodyguard, was Uncle Roy, my mom's older brother. Great. Just what I needed. I sighed, feeling a wave of frustration roll through me. Of course you brought Roy, I muttered. Uncle Roy had always been the fixer in the family, the guy they called when they needed someone to strong-arm their way through a situation. He was built like a linebacker, with hands like bricks and a permanent scowl that only made him look scarier. He was a big guy, both physically and metaphorically, and if anyone could intimidate me, it would be him. But I wasn't scared, not anymore. Uncle Roy stepped forward, folding his arms across his chest. "Lucas, we need to talk," he said, his voice gravelly. "No, we really don't," I replied, crossing my arms. "You've made your choice. You're not getting the car back, and you're certainly not getting your credit card reinstated." My mom, completely ignoring the fact that I had just saved their asses by cutting off their access to funds, huffed impatiently, "You can't just do that. Lucas, you don't get to play God with our lives." She looked over at Roy for backup, but I wasn't having it. "You abandoned your grandson, Mom. You left him locked in a house for 3 days, thinking that he was fine. He's 6 years old. You let him cry in the dark and believed that was okay because you needed a vacation." I glared at her, waiting for some form of recognition, for her to apologize, for her to finally acknowledge the gravity of what they'd done. But of course, she didn't. Instead, she sighed and rolled her eyes. "He's 6. He's not a baby. We left him snacks. Lucas, you're overreacting." My anger flared again. "You think leaving snacks is enough? He's a child, not a mini adult who can fend for himself. He can't even reach the top shelf in the kitchen. But you thought he could handle being alone for 3 days. Roy stepped in, trying to mediate. "Listen, we all get it. You're upset, but family's family, and you don't just cut people off like that." I turned to him, my eyes hard. Family doesn't leave a kid alone to go on vacation. You don't get to treat him like an afterthought and then expect everything to go back to normal. Uncle Roy, usually the voice of reason in our family, just shook his head like I was the one in the wrong. "It's not that simple. Lucas, you've got to understand they've been there for you. They've helped you with Max before." I let out a short laugh. "They've helped me. Let me guess, whenever they needed something. They helped, right?" I pointed a finger at my parents. "This isn't about what they've done for me. Roy, this is about what they've done to Max." My mom's face twisted in indignation. "I can't believe you're doing this. You're overreacting. We deserve this trip. Lucas, we've worked hard all our lives." "You deserved a trip," I repeated, almost laughing in disbelief. "You deserve to leave your grandson alone, in a locked house, with nothing but junk food for 3 days. That did it. I saw red. My patience snapped, and I turned to Max, who was standing just inside the doorway, staring at us with wide eyes. His small hands were clutching the doorframe like he was too scared to come out. "Max," I said softly, kneeling in front of him, "you ready to go?" Max nodded, his eyes filled with a silent question. He didn't understand everything, but he knew enough to feel that something was wrong. I stood up and walked out of the house with him in tow. But before I could get to the car, my mother came storming out onto the porch, barefoot, dressed in her tropical vacation clothes. She screeched, "You're not taking our car!" I didn't break my stride. "I am. And if you need a ride, I suggest you call an Uber." My dad followed her, looking at me like I was the crazy one. "Lucas, come on, you can't do this. We raised you. We've always been there for you." "No," I said, turning to face him. "You didn't raise me. You abandoned your grandson. You're not getting off the hook for that." "Mom, I don't want to go," Max whispered behind me, still clutching my hand. I turned back to him and gently squeezed his hand. "You're not going anywhere with them, buddy. Not now. Not ever." I put him in the car and locked the door, feeling the weight of the moment. Then I looked back one last time. "Oh, and just so you know, I canceled your credit card." My mom's face went ashen. "You did what she screamed?" I smiled, feeling the tiniest bit of satisfaction. "I checked the bank statements while I was waiting this morning. You charged your vacation to the emergency card I gave you last year, the one meant for medical bills. So yeah, you won't be using that anymore." I slid into the driver's seat, my son looking up at me. His eyes were wide. "Are they in trouble, Dad?" "Not as much as they should be," I said quietly, starting the engine. I pulled out of the driveway and left them standing there, furious and powerless. I didn't hear from them for an entire week. No calls, no texts, no messages. It was like they had finally understood the weight of what they'd done. I thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd learned their lesson. But I was wrong. A week later, just as I was sitting down to dinner, the familiar sound of tires screeching outside caught my attention. I didn't need to look. I knew who it was. The door knocked loudly. I opened it without hesitation. There they were, both of my parents, standing in front of me like two spoiled children demanding attention. Behind them, leaning against a rusty pickup truck, stood my Uncle Roy. "Lucas, we need to talk," Roy said in his usual gruff voice. I crossed my arms. "No, we really don't,"